Hello and welcome to Films and That. My name is Rob Turnbull.
And my name's Sam Hall.
And today we're looking at the film Primer.
Alright, what made you pick Primer?
Well, this was recommended to us by a friend of ours, a mutual friend. And when I finished watching this film, I immediately rewound it and watched it again in its entirety. And I think any film that makes you do that deserves to be talked about.
Yeah.
Two entrepreneurs create a mysterious device that begins to unravel their lives.
That's very undescriptive.
This review contains spoilers. The reason I rewound it and watched it again was because it's so fucking complicated.
It is.
I had no idea what was going on, so I just had to rewatch it to kind of get a grip on what I just watched.
The good thing is you don't have to feel bad about that because, most of the reviews of the film all said the same thing. They said, I haven't got a clue what just happened.
Yeah.
It's because it's very specific. It's not about being intelligent enough to understand film. It's about being intelligent enough to understand the science that they're explaining.
Yeah.
Which was a deliberate attempt by the director.
Yeah, it goes very hard into the science of it. I believe he was a software engineer or something, so he had a background in this.
He studied mathematics as well, didn't he, at university?
Yeah, so he's very smart, obviously, but he kind of went full tilt into the actual science of how this would work. And if you're not a scientist, it can be a bit daunting, to be honest.
Very daunting, yeah. So the director's name is?
Shane Carruth.
And
is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah. Yeah, that's how I pronounce it.
Yeah.
And he also plays Abe, is it?
He plays Aaron.
Oh, okay.
Who's the main character.
I did feel like there's very early on, there's a scene with four guys sitting around a table, all in white shirts, and I thought it's just so indistinct. Just four really indistinct looking people.
Yeah.
And I thought I was really going to struggle. Luckily, the two main focus characters, one is blonde and one is brunette.
Yeah.
Brunette? Right. One is blonde and one has brown hair.
But interestingly, they do have fairly similar names, Abe and Aaron.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of, let's get on to the first point about, it's a real low budget film. It makes a lot of mistakes and errors that you just wouldn't make in a normal film. So calling the characters similar names is a real kind of screenwriting mistake, basically, because you want to separate your characters out so the audience know who's who. But then...
Well, perhaps that could be as simple as the fact that the director didn't really have a filmmaking background.
Exactly, yeah.
His motivation for making the film was more about the science than wanting to make a film.
Yeah.
And it's also clear that no studio got anywhere near it whatsoever. I think that's what's so great about it.
Yeah, true. Because it wasn't self-financed. I think he did get some money from somewhere else. But I'm pretty sure that was from his dad or something. So it wasn't...
It's only £7,000 budget, you know.
And then it turned over, 800,000 in the box office, something like that?
Yeah.
So that's how you make a film, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's just the initial box office, whatever. I mean, as I understand it, it's picked up a cult following, which I don't even know what that means anymore. Like what Star Wars apparently is a cult film, But basically what they mean is, it picked up a niche audience who got into this film.
But it is a success story for the independent filmmaker.
Yeah. There's no such thing as a film made by one person, but...
This is as close as you're going to get.
Yeah.
You gotta use it, right?
What? Does it hurt?
No, I didn't feel anything. That sound is just weirding me out.
Should we get into the plot first, then we can talk about other things afterwards?
Yeah, you can try and get into the plot.
It's about these two characters, Abe and Aaron. They start out making devices in their shed. They're getting a bit fed up about not making the money that they should be making from these error checking machines, I think is what they're initially doing. So they kind of shoot off and do their own little thing. But they end up creating a machine which they don't really understand. It kind of runs by itself, and they discover that you can use it as a kind of time travel device.
Yeah, and the way they do that is really interesting, because I'm really happy that I went into it not knowing anything about it.
Yeah.
Because even when they're talking about what they've discovered, you still don't know what exactly it is they're talking about. All they're talking about is that they found some fungus growing.
Yeah.
And they're saying it's growing at a faster rate, it seems.
Yeah.
He says to get the same amount of protein that we have, the same amount that I was wiping off every 5 days, and 5 days later it would accumulate.
He says it would take about 5 to 6 years.
I've never seen time travel explained in this way before. You start at one point and then it goes to the other point, but then it just comes back around and comes to the first point again. So it is growing at a normal rate within the machine. It has actually gone through several thousand, minutes inside the machine where only a few minutes outside the machine have passed. And so they discover that if you interrupt the process when it goes back around to the A point, you can then get out and get out back in time. So you've jumped back in time. You can't go to any time period you want. You have to set the machine up initially and then plan out how it's going to happen, which is a real interesting way of looking at time travel.
Very, very clearly limited by the visuals. That we're talking about the time travel machine in particular. It looks like a computer from the 70s.
Do you mean the box they initially make?
Yeah.
Yeah, it just looks like a crappy box with some batteries attached to it.
And even the actual, when they maximize it, when they make it bigger.
Yeah.
Even then,
it just looks like a box.
It's a weird looking box in a shed.
Well, that is the point, actually. The director, he really wanted to go down the realistic route. So there wasn't like laser beams and things.
There is no chrome finish. People aren't fussed about what it looks like.
Yeah.
They've got limited funds.
Yeah.
What they've got to make is just, put some stuff together, basically. So it looks like what it would look like is the concept of the film, really, isn't it?
So it's really getting to the heart of how these things actually happen. I do like, though, how once they discovered they have a time machine, the first thing they do is start to manipulate the stock market with no hesitation for how this will affect the space-time continuum or whatever.
Yes.
They just use it to kind of get money.
In terms of physics, they're geniuses. In terms of ethics, they're idiots, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, and they make mistakes as well, because they do try as much as possible to do things correctly. Like Abe, when he first goes through the machine, he completely shuts himself off from the world. And he doesn't interact with it, or like TV or media or anything, so he doesn't know what's happening in that period of time, because he doesn't want to fuck anything up. But then later on, they get more and more careless, because he takes a mobile phone through, and then when he comes back in time, his mobile phone rings, so that's broken the kind of symmetry, they call it.
Yeah. But that was one point I really sort of stuck up and said, I learned something about this. Sort of like, how does it work if the exact same phone exists in the same period and somebody rings it?
Yeah.
Which phone answers, And they talk about that. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, and isn't it like the signal just finds the first one it can and then it stops ringing the other one?
Well, they work that out, don't they?
Yeah.
So, they think that's what happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
They know, obviously. But that's interesting, isn't it? Just to think about little things like that. There's a lot of tiny details.
Yeah, it's not about the big grandiose ideas all the time.
Are you sure that's how cell phones work? No. You feel all right? I feel fine, do you? Yeah.
Something that a film normally wouldn't even touch. So essentially what we have here is something that is a film that would never be made, that has been made. Absolutely 100% no studio would ever touch it, not even an independent studio.
Yeah, because it is so complicated. Like the science is just too much at certain points. There's a really great bit when Abe's explaining to Aaron how the machine works, and Abe is just going, hold on a minute, just stop talking, I just need to think about this.
It's 1 minute out here. It's not mass, it's not
22 hours.
It's around 1300.
27 minutes in the box.
It's odd, it's an odd number.
How many minutes is it then? It's 22.
And all the equations that describe motion and heat and entropy.
Just 1 minute, just a second.
And that's the director and the writer of the film saying those words.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? That's really interesting. Just stop.
And even when they're trying to explain it, it's still like, I still don't quite get it. Even though they sort of repeat it. Like with the initial concept, of saying, well, look what we've got here. So what's this? This is fungus. They explain what the fungus is. They're still going in explicit detail, but it's just such a complex idea that it's still difficult to grasp.
It travels forward normal.
You gotta write this down.
Aaron, there's nothing to write down.
Well, then I'm writing it.
Okay, fine. Look.
Yeah, and it gets way more complicated later on.
Yeah.
Because
you need a plot to develop.
Yeah. So they go on quite happily, kind of manipulating the stock market for a bit and getting more and more money.
Is that Rachel's car? No, that's not Rachel's, that's her dad's. They have the same kind.
Isn't it Abe's girlfriend's dad appears for some reason?
And they say he's unshaven, like he looks like a...
Yeah. So then they figure out that he's actually gone through the time machine. And it's just like, why? Why did he go through the time machine?
That's the part, that's where you're going, what? Why didn't you... What? Why? How? How did he find it? Why him?
I did find out that that actor was Shane's dad. So I feel like it was him just because he had access to him.
Yeah, okay.
So that was why the character was in there, I think. But so following that, they decide that this whole thing's been a fuck up. And we discover that Abe's had another machine that's been running for ages. The failsafe machine. So he goes back in time to prevent this whole thing from happening. He finds that Aaron's already beaten him to it. So Aaron's already gone back in time before him. Doesn't he like drug himself in the past?
It's like the way you're trying to explain it. It's just like, it's just so difficult to explain.
Yeah.
You know, in a nutshell. But yeah.
But then it just keeps going like this. It keeps going even further. So then Aaron comes back a second time to drug the second version of himself. But then he can't because he's too tired. So then he has a fight with himself.
So the whole time I'm thinking, if he meets himself, wouldn't that cause a paradox that would destroy the time continuum? Because I'm immediately thinking of Back to the Future.
You can't meet yourself.
Yeah.
Great Scott! Jennifer could conceivably encounter her future self.
So the whole time I'm trying to explain it in my head through a sort of science fiction interpretation of time travel, when their approach is a more realistic one.
I didn't invent the time machine to win at gambling. I invented the time machine to travel through time.
Why not the lottery?
Well, we can if you want.
So talking about the visuals, I'd like to defend it. All his resources are incredibly limited.
Yeah.
So he was still trying to be creative with it. Once you go with something, and you make it consistent and you make it a style, you can still make it work.
Yeah, the direction he went down was very saturated colours. And so one scene would be incredibly green, another one would be incredibly blue. But there's things like, there's inconsistencies in the colour temperature between shots though. That's just an editing thing. So that's just showing inexperience and a lack of skill in that aspect. I know it's low budget and it's independent. Maybe he was going after a kind of realistic look, but it's so noisy that it's really distracting, I find.
I got to a point where the noise must have been the style, because the noise is the visual noise we're talking about.
Yeah.
The
film grain.
Yeah, the film grain. Like that is everywhere. Once I got used to it, and once I just got into that frame of mind that this is what they've gone for, then I was able to accept it and think of it as like it's part of the flavour of the film.
And there's another bit as well when they decided to shoot a scene next to a really loud fountain. Do you remember that bit?
Yeah.
And it's just like, there's certain bits you can't hear what they're saying.
It just took some getting used to for me. I wasn't completely acclimated to it. If it was just you had to worry about, I'd still think you're stupid. You little sack of... You know what, even if you see him, don't tell me.
Like, why did you choose to do it in the fountain? It makes no narrative sense to do that. Things like that is really reminds you of how inexperienced they were as a crew to do that. I think they could have done a better job even with the funds they had.
Well, yeah.
No, I don't want a steak. Let's just grab some tacos on the way to the shop. I have some stuff I want to try out.
Okay. We can get some tacos on the way, or we can get a steak afterwards.
What are you talking about? I'm not paying for a steak.
What I did like about the sound, though, there was quite a lot of naturalistic dialogue where characters are interrupting each other or saying, oh, what did you say then? I didn't quite catch that, which you don't get in a more mainstream film. And I miss that in mainstream films. I would like more of that because I think that represents more about how people actually act.
Well, I think in a way that's sort of what heightens the film for me.
That's what I figured. So I tried 3 others. I got the exact same thing. I spent all last night...
What was it?
I don't know. I spent all last night in a 2-hour lunch break today.
I don't think this is what their intention was, but for me, that complete rejection of form almost made me appreciate it more. Because it's so rare to see Americans on screen not acting like, they're in a soap opera.
Yeah.
It really gave you that fly on the wall feeling.
Definitely, yeah. And I don't know if this was a deliberate choice or not, but there's certain aspects of the story that weren't explained directly to you on screen. So did you get the whole thing about...
Rachel's ex-boyfriend walks into my birthday party with a shotgun.
What?
Swear to God.
So the whole film, I'm waiting for that to happen.
Yeah. That never happens.
Yeah. But in America, they couldn't get... It is an American, right? It's not Canadian, is it?
It was Texas.
There you go. I just thought... I thought, could they not get hold of a gun?
Yeah.
Surely they can get hold of a gun in Texas.
First time we hear about this is someone comes in and there's a really weird dialogue sequence when he goes like, oh, what did you say? Like, what did you say when you did that thing? But that never happened.
Great. Can actually get some work done today.
Hey guys, what's going on?
You make fun, but there's a difference.
Wait, what did you call him?
What?
And when you walked in, what'd you
He
say?
really didn't tell you about it?
He's referring to something that didn't happen in the actual scene. So you just sat there going like, what's he talking about? What does he mean? What did you say when you said that thing? Because he didn't say that thing.
Wait, what did you call him?
What?
And when you walked in?
Great. Can actually get some work done today.
I wonder if that is, again, maybe I'm just making excuses for the director now. If that was deliberate, if it was supposed to be like Carruth just interjecting into a conversation.
Yeah.
That you don't know, where you don't know what's going on, and they're not giving away all the details.
Yeah.
It must be deliberate to an extent, because even if you're that inexperienced, you can't just make, you can't just write dialogue like that and think that that's solid.
Yeah. From doing my research after I watched the film, what happened was the moment where the same day when Abe told Aaron about the time machine, Rachel, Abe's girlfriend, was killed by her ex-boyfriend or something. At that point, Aaron's discovered that he has a time machine and he has a chance to save this woman.
Yeah.
So then he goes on this obsessive kind of quest to save her life and to do it the most perfect way he can. So he keeps going back in time, he keeps going back to kind of perfect these things each time. But I didn't really get a sense of why he was doing that, why he was so obsessed with doing that. But also it just descends into kind of madness, a time travel loop of just what's going on now,
It's because so many other things are happening at the same time by that point.
I've actually printed off, you can find this on the internet, like a timeline graph of all the different timelines, and there are 9.
Only 9.
Only 9. And I don't know if you can see that, I'll put it on the screen.
I don't know if you could see that. It's a bit tiny. I can't read it, and it's right there. And it's just like there's so many moments that sort of throw you off, aren't there? Like there's a scene when I think it's Abe is listening to a recording of a conversation that's already happened from the timeline he's already experienced, and he's there as it's happening, and it's different. And I thought, okay, but I was just like, I was interested, I was intrigued, but at the same time, I kind of didn't know where it was going, or even why we got to that point. And I was like, sorry, have we been here before? I kept on thinking, have we seen this bit from a different perspective? And I couldn't remember it,
Yeah, there's a disconnect between what you're seeing and what you're hearing. It's clever in the way it's written, but it's really confusing to watch.
Yeah, I know, sorry. Rick.
So he does eventually succeed, Aaron, though, doesn't he? He does eventually save Rachel's life and become a hero.
But then they're still left with the implications of everything that's happened. And
basically, Aaron runs off with the machine, and we see him at the end making a massive one of these machines. And it kind of just leaves it at that, doesn't it? That's where the film ends.
I think his intention is to just keep on going back and keep on making everything perfect, isn't it? And Abe goes abroad.
Yeah, it does kind of peter out, like he doesn't know how to end it. I felt the whole plot with Rachel was just, it felt unnecessary to me. What do you think?
At least show us, A lot of what is happening through dialogue and not through visuals.
Yes. So it's the kind of opposite of show, don't tell, really.
Yeah.
It's tell and don't show anything.
Yeah. The whole film. The problem with exposition is that it makes you bored and patronises you. In this case, you're not patronised at all. You're like, no, patronise me, for Christ's sake. I don't know what's going on.
I need an exposition dump now.
Yeah.
What happened? Okay, I slipped.
Like, I didn't really understand how he could keep going back in time. Because because he kept taking a machine with him in the machine and then setting it up again and then taking another machine in the machine, but then you kind of think, well, where did you get that machine from? And it's one of those things, there's a bit in Austin Powers when they just go, just don't think about it too much.
I suggest you don't worry about this sort of thing and just enjoy yourself. That goes for you all, too. Yes.
But you do kind of want to, because, like you said, that's why you rewound and watched it again.
Yeah. So
straight away.
In that aspect of it, I did want to understand what was going on. So I did watch it multiple times. I did download that timeline sheet. And I did read through it, and I do understand what happened now. So there is that, I suppose. There is that aspect of it is an entertaining film beyond it just being a film, beyond its own runtime. So even though it's only 80 minutes, you spend weeks thinking about, did that happen, and does that link to that thing? Did that happen because of that? There is a wider kind of entertainment value there, I think. And even when I was watching it as well, I just didn't know where it was going to go. And because you've got that independent nature to it, it's really exciting because they can just do anything, because they can do bonkers, completely balls to the wall madness, because they don't have the restrictions of knowing any better, if that makes sense.
That, as well as not having anyone over your shoulder saying you can't do that. They're not thinking about the rules. People, after a while, I think people get so obsessed with what you're supposed to do with a script that you lose a little bit, and especially in America, you can't get away with doing away with the tropes of a film. Yeah, they basically, this is a film made by someone who presumably didn't go to film school. No. Yeah.
But just had a passion for something and just made it happen, which is incredibly exciting, really.
Yeah. This probably the other thing we should probably say before finishing is, don't watch this and then think, oh well, I was looking for something to watch tonight with my pizza. Don't watch it expecting to enjoy it. That's not to mean that it isn't a good, interesting film to watch, but just don't go into it thinking, oh, I'm looking forward to a relaxing night in watching this, because that's not the way to approach this film at all. If you're really interested in science, and physics in particular, and even philosophy, then go and watch this film. But just don't do it just to pass the time.
And make notes as well.
Might want
to do that.
Yeah.
Hit that pause button every 10 minutes and go, this happened, this happened, this happened. Because if you don't, like I did that the first time actually, I paused it and kind of like, okay, and started watching again. And if you don't do that, I don't think you're going to keep up. Did you?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't keep up.